child, Daniel Jacobs.
End of an era. Now, for y'all who were watching boxing before it started building up its hype again, y'all probably remember going on PBC, going on DAZN. Y'all probably remember around the 2014, 2013 era, there was a guy named Daniel Jacobs. Well, Daniel Jacobs has now officially retired from the sport of boxing. Now, a little bit of statistics on Daniel Jacobs, 37-5. That was his professional record. He is a former world champion, a former middleweight champion. And when you really look at his resume, Breezy, I mean, he's fought some very good opponents. He's fought some very good guys. I mean, his resume is pretty stacked, if you ask me. I mean, we're talking about Canelo Alvarez, Triple G. We're talking about Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. I mean Jr., excuse me. I know that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. didn't pan out the way everybody wanted him to, but regardless. Peter Quillen, he had a Fight of the Night honors with Sergio Mora. I mean, he's got himself a good resume. And honestly, it's a career that a lot of boxers would be proud to have. Now, before I continue with this article, I do want to say that the source for it was Mike Coppinger of ESPN. Now, I do have a quote right here from Daniel Jacobs. He announced his retirement on his Instagram, but I'm going to give you the quote anyway. He said, "I'm able to say I'm the first cancer survivor to be a boxing world champion, the biggest accomplishment I've ever received. Being able to inspire others with my story has always made me feel like my life meant more than just fighting inside the ring. A true miracle, man." And it's a picture of his robe being hung up in the locker room or the dressing room, as you would say. But anyway, a little bit on that. Now, y'all are probably saying this man had cancer. Yes, he was diagnosed with, I'm going to probably butcher this too because Mario can't read today, but osteostroma, a rare form of bone cancer in May of 2011 after he woke up one morning completely paralyzed. He underwent surgery to remove a large tumor wrapped around his spine and rebuilt his spinal column, as I would say. After dozens of rehabilitation treatments, Jacob returned to the ring in October of 2012. Nearly 2 years later, he won the WBA secondary title at 160 pounds and made four defenses, including first round knockout of Peter Quillen. Look, man, that's a successful career in itself. That's a successful life in itself right there. I mean, we all know about cancer. We all know how serious it is. We know how many millions and millions of people around the world die of cancer. And the fact that this man had bone cancer, it was serious to the point where he got paralyzed and he was able to come back from that and also be able to have himself a success in boxing. I mean, that's a comeback story in itself. That's a story you can make a movie out of. So, with all due respect, Daniel Jacobs, I mean, he really had himself a good career. Did he did he defeat guys like Canelo Alvarez and Golovkin? No. But I will say this, he has fought a lot of great competitors in that ring, and this is a guy who has basically shown that you literally can do anything. You literally can come back from anything, and you could still be that same guy. And in his case, he was still able to be a very successful fighter after suffering from cancer and after recovering and being in remission from it. Now, with that being said, Breezy, I can keep on talking, but I'm gonna pass it on to you. Just give me your reaction and your thoughts on Daniel Jacobs retiring.
Mean, the man has had a very nice career. I mean, you can't take anything away from Daniel Jacobs, Gabe Rosado, Golovkin, Canelo, and then fighting Shane Mosley. I mean, the guy is constantly looking to fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. It didn't matter if it was high competition, low competition. Daniel Jacobs was one of those guys where there was smoke, there was him. You know, he never turned down any fades. He was willing to step in with anybody on any given night. One of my well well known moments from Daniel Jacob, the infamous scene between him and Jamal Charlo when it was backstage and Jamal Charlo was having an interview and then Daniel Jacobs walked up, just the guy I'm looking for. And then they went back at it. One of the best moments ever, you know. And I like Daniel Jacobs, man. I mean, cool guy, cool personality, calm, cool, collective, very well spoken, very nice in the ring. Like Mario said, yes, although he didn't get big wins, but at the same time, though, it's better to get in the ring with those guys than to not have gotten in with the ring with them at all. So he still had the experience to get in there with those guys. And another thing too is thank God that God was able to bless this man that he can come back from things such as severe cancer to still continue on with his career. How many fighters have died in that ring? How many fighters have had disabilities happen to them and they wasn't able to get back up on their feet to compete in that ring? Daniel Jacobs is one of the very few boxers that can say that he was able to come back from something so severe as cancer and still compete. Now, I will say this too, you know, give that man his flowers, give that man his praise. He will no longer be with and the saying always goes, you don't miss a person until they leave. You don't miss a person until they're going. And I'm telling y'all right now, you go back and you look at Daniel Jacobs, you're gonna realize that yes, it wasn't no big wins that he had against those guys. But at the same time, though, he was that guy. He would get in there with anybody on any given night, and you have to respect it. We always talk about best fight the best, and Daniel Jacobs was one of those guys willing to show it all and leave it all on the line in the ring. So respect to you, Daniel Jacobs. God bless you, and congrats on being able to overcome something like cancer and still compete and live out your career and be able to retire on your terms. So congrats to you to that, Daniel Jacobs.
And he did beat some notable names. Again, Peter Quillen was a notable name around that time. Sergey Deverenchenko, who's still fighting. He's fighting Christian Mabili at Top Rank pretty soon. I mean, Gabriel Rosado, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. He's beaten some good names. Sergio Mora. I mean, the guy is a former WBA middleweight champion. It's just the two names that when it mattered the most that he couldn't beat was Canelo Alvarez and Triple G. And that's no diss or slight to him because if anybody remembers how dominant Triple G was a bad man. And Canelo Alvarez, I mean, that guy's still going. You know, he's still the face of boxing. So that's obviously something that you can't knock against him. He lost to John Ryder in a split decision. He lost to Shane Mosley Jr. by unanimous decision. And this is the guy that, you know, could have continued fighting, I feel like. I feel like he could have continued and had himself some more fights, but we all know how this sport goes. Usually, once you start picking up a couple losses in a row, especially when it's not championship competition, usually that's when it's a sign that your career is slowly coming to an end. But he ended it on his terms. You know what I'm saying? He had his fight with Shane Mosley Jr., lost, and he called it a career. Now, what I will say is going back and looking at his career, I mean, the guy was a knockout artist. I mean, we're talking 37 wins with 30 knockouts. And on top of that, he also had himself some very good slick defense. I mean, this guy was really good at slipping under punches and counter punching as well. He was a very good pressure fighter as well. I mean, he was a guy that was relentless in your face. You know, he just never stopped with the pressure. And it's a fighter that I truly do respect. Daniel Jacobs has been a guy that I've truly respected in this sport. He's a guy that's definitely an inspiration. I mean, again, we're going to say one more time, the man survived bone cancer and was able to still fight. That in itself could be made out of a movie. So it's time for us to start giving Daniel Jacobs his flowers. It's time for us to start remembering who Daniel Jacobs is and who he was. And overall, I would love to see this guy, you know, continue in the sport of boxing as a trainer, you know, as an advocate, analyst, whatever the case might be. I believe he's done some analyst work himself before in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I could have sworn I remember him doing a little bit of analyst work. You know, he's a very well-spoken guy too. That's another thing people forget. He's a very well-spoken guy as well. So I would really like to see this guy, you know, kind of hop into a day zone or a PBC chair and, you know, basically give his analysis of fighters, breakdowns, you know, and I would love to see him on commentary. That's something I would really like to see. But overall, if we're talking about the boxing career of Daniel Jacobs, I think he had himself a really good career. And I think it's a career that a lot of young fighters can look at and be inspired by, but not only be inspired by, but aim towards. So I think that's what people got to start realizing, understanding. And again, not every fighter is going to fight forever. You know, there's going to come a point in time where a fighter's time is done in the ring, but that doesn't mean that he was a scrub or that doesn't mean that he wasn't a good fighter. Daniel Jacobs was a very good fighter. His time has just came, and that's what people got to understand. So with that being said, I say this is going to be a pretty short episode. You know, I say we're going to wrap it up here, but we do want to say before we hop off, I do want to say Daniel Jacobs, thank you for everything you've done in the sport of boxing. Thank you for the memorable fights, the memorable moments, you know, and thank you just for being an inspiration in boxing. This is a guy that I would love to, you know, report on and make news about because it's usually something good. It's usually something positive. So respect to Daniel Jacobs. And with that being said, all right, I say we log off this episode. You know what I'm saying? If you guys are on the podcast, make sure y'all continue to listen to us. If you're on the YouTube, make sure y'all continue to watch, subscribe. Make sure y'all click the other videos as well. Again, we got some bangers coming out for y'all. Again, we say every other day we got bangers coming out for y'all. And if y'all are wondering why you should be tuning into the Puncher's Point, this is why. This is the platform you need to be tuning into. Okay. Again, we told you, y'all, we're 100% authentic. We're 100% real. We don't, fake it with y'all. We give y'all our straight opinions, whether you like it or not. And that's just the truth. So with that being said, if y'all want the truth in boxing, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.